Welcome to TheoTRADE. This is Don Kaufman. It's November 13th, 2024. Just about 40 minutes to go to the cash close here on this Wednesday afternoon. Could start off talking about the S&P futures, but for the most part right now, they are massively unchanged. And interestingly enough, you cruise over to the SPX right now. If you see that line that kind of transcends your screen there, that, people, is exactly where we closed, of course, last Friday. That is the central point, of course, of the expected move. Take a look at the movement this week thus far, or lack thereof. So to start off this TheoTRADE evening video on a bit of a different tone, we're actually going to talk a bit about Peanut the Squirrel coin. Why? Oh, wow. Because this is just a sign. And if you're not familiar with it, and by the way, if you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about with Peanut the Squirrel, that's fine too. But what I'd like to display to you this evening is just wild froth. Like, people ask if certain situations are a bubble and how that may actually impact, even the S&Ps. Well, I think that this is a fairly critical discussion. So just a few weeks back, just prior to the election, there was headlines regarding, well, Peanut the Squirrel. Again, not going to get into the politics behind Peanut the Squirrel. Nevertheless, well, the ingenious decision was made to have a Peanut the Squirrel coin. And what that basically amounted to, yeah, you got it. It's cryptocurrency, and it's called Peanut the Squirrel. Literally, you cannot make this crap up. So under the symbol of PNUT, you got to love that as well. Are you aware right now it's sitting at almost a $1.6 billion market cap? And if you have any question whatsoever, okay, about, shall we call it, chaos in the marketplace? I mean, again, this morning, by the way, this was well beyond that. I mean, when you see a coin called Peanut the Squirrel, and it hits, like this morning, hit $1.8 billion market cap, okay? If you don't question it, at that point, there's something actually wrong with you. And the problem with you've got right now is, look, I'm not here to preach to you about the crypto market, but you start to lose all sense of reality. When you start looking like Bitcoin futures here, they're exploding to the upside, hitting some 94,000, actually reversing a little bit in terms of trade. But this is not, a story of anything other than just absolute froth in a marketplace. When, again, we're seeing something that, starts off as kind of a meme, hit, $1.6 billion of a market cap. And that's of course, Peanut the Squirrel. And obviously, Bitcoin has, some real substantiation to the upside. Nevertheless, okay, if Peanut the Squirrel goes down, do you think that there's not going to be what we term systematic risk back to not only the remainder of the crypto market, but the S&Ps as well? And that's it's a great discussion to have, because now I'm actually going to pull up, for instance, Tasty, and let you recognize that most major brokerage platforms, including Tasty and Robinhood, a lot of the platforms now, you can seamlessly and interchangeably, flip over here, trade some crypto, turn around a couple seconds later, trade some S&P futures, which unto itself creates what we call systematic risk. And systematic risk is almost like a domino effect, to where, just give you an example. Let's just give you an example of, well, Peanut the Squirrel. Turns out that coin is completely and utterly worthless. The market cap starts to implode. People turn around at that point and are forced out of positions, significant positions. Some of the positions they may be forced out of could possibly be something like Bitcoin. Okay, you get forced out of a Bitcoin position, start seeing sell-side activity inside of the Bitcoin marketplace. Immediately, it starts to spill over, okay, into equity and different asset classes, including, of course, S&Ps. To think that these markets are not linked. There's people that are like, they're mutually exclusive. Absolutely unequivocally not. If you can actually trade an electronic platform and seamlessly execute into crypto markets, you can execute into the S&Ps. Next thing you trade in futures contracts, people, it's all one and the same. And it's one of the focal points of tonight, because if you're looking at froth in the marketplace, a bubble, if you will, in the near term, never has there been a better sign than Peanut the Squirrel. Well, that's where I wanted to start, of course, this evening's video. But let's move past squirrel talk tonight and back into, of course, our equity markets. And so, as I was saying a moment ago, the equity markets are massively unchanged. But before I even get into detail about what I will expect for the S&Ps for the remainder of the week, I got to jump right over to the dollar. The dollar, to me, as of right now, is one of the most shocking trades on the screen. Now, this is something that I brought up extensively because prior to the election, we literally laid out and said, like, look, that move prior to the election is clearly a move to mitigate exposure, okay, in a Trump victory. Well, newsflash, election's over, Trump victory happened, we're continuing to explode to the upside. What the impact of the dollar is, initially people are going to be like, yeah, man, that's really going to implode gold. I would agree. But I think that metals in the near term, may actually be viable. And why? Well, we just saw a print today in CPI, okay, of 3.3%. And that is year over year. So, look, inflation's not necessarily dead. And gold might be still a decent hedge longer term. This is not like a short-term bounce I'd be looking for in gold. There might be some really viable entry points. With inflation in mind, what do you think the dollar exploding to the upside like this is going to do to emerging markets? What this basically does, first of all, emerging markets, Europe, look at the euro right now. I got to open up a 5-year, okay, for you to see some of the damage that's being inflicted. But when you do open up a 5-year, you realize, easily, okay, the euro could come right back to par and then some, okay, with the US dollar. But right now, damage is being inflicted. So the euro's going down, of course, against the US dollar. And really, to put it very mildly, the US dollar is exploding higher, okay, versus almost all of your major currencies. And we can, of course, scroll through and take a look. Okay, here's the British pound getting, well, pounded. You take a look at, of course, the Japanese yen also, okay, on a pretty evil trajectory at that point. But what's the impact of this? Again, with a strong dollar, you're exporting inflation. If you take a look at EEM right now, it's getting absolutely annihilated. The EEM is the emerging market ETF. It's very heavily Asian, okay, weighted, but emerging markets is getting hammered over here. FXI, okay, also getting hammered in the near term. A lot of that, specifically, a lot of that has to do with the strength inside of the US dollar. Nevertheless, okay, what are the trades? Well, the trades are, if the US dollar is actually going to back off a little bit, clearly there'd be a huge pop inside of the emerging markets. But moreover, okay, I'm going to look for good entry to not only gold, but also silver. And I've mentioned this time and again, and I'm a big time buyer at the 26 level inside of silver. Even though I know I could take a loss in the short term, I think long term we're going to be in a beautiful, beautiful position with that one. So again, silver, as it starts to back off, okay, I'll look to acquire it, maybe sell some puts down in the 26 region. And if we actually do trade 26 inside of silver, I'll be buying that with effectively with both hands. All right, so moving past the dollar, which is, again, it's like one of the biggest movers on the screen. What else you got on the screen over here? One of the things actually caught my attention. It's the SMH. Semiconductors starting to back off a little bit, actually hitting below their expected move. Okay, this is something to obviously watch as well, as you might not see this necessarily like in NVIDIA. NVIDIA is basically unchanged in the week. Okay, Meta actually hit its lower edge of the expected move today and bounced back up. Google, okay, for the most part unchanged. Look, if you're kind of glancing around at some of the big tech stocks over here, if there is any degree of weakness, it's being masked predominantly by some of the price action inside of Tesla. Nevertheless, take a look at Tesla as this day has progressed. It too has actually backed off quite phenomenally on the trading session. So has big tech actually run out of steam? Well, I'm going to tell you, the remainder of this week, there's a lot left to the imagination. And one of the reasons is we are, as I started off this video here, we're massively unchanged. And I always joke about that, but the more that you're unchanged, okay, the more you're unchanged over here, what you're actually getting to, you're like, okay, so who cares, man? We're unchanged. Yes, the issue though with that, and there is an issue, the expected move this week is plus or minus roughly $82. That's $82 of movement inside of the SPX. Right now, effectively, we're unchanged. The gamma risk continues to actually grow. So we have the propensity, even with a very mild move to the upside, we could explode higher. A very mild move to the downside, we rip to the downside. Obviously, we've seen explosive moves to the upside, but I mean, look, predominantly just last week, as I said, this week there's nothing out of trade, okay? This remainder of the week, just Thursday and Friday, look for this market volatility to start to pick up. I mean, look, volatility, specifically VIX, has kind of imploded even more. We're in the 13 handle, okay? If you get the opportunity to actually buy any type of VIX spread, it might be viable now. I already have one on. I would need a real explosion in the VIX. But I got to tell you right now, okay, where we sit on the week, you know, if you can buy some premium and look for an explosive move, either higher or lower, I'm telling you, that is what we are going to see as this week progresses. Last but definitely not least, I did lay a very friendly butterfly directly over the lower edge of my expected move, of course, for this Friday expiration. Does that mean, okay, I think we're going down here? Not necessarily, but I got to tell you, to pay 50 to 55 cents to buy a butterfly, okay, for the opportunity to be able to make as much as 15 bucks on that butterfly, I am all over it all day long. So here we go into the close again on this Wednesday afternoon. The S&P's massively unchanged, but you need to anticipate a whole lot of movement between now and Friday afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining us here at TheoTRADE. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.